Thank you both. It would almost seem as if I could not get another job after that. We're very happy that you're with us today, Mr. Ambassador, and thank you very much, Senator Sanders, for providing us with this opportunity. I simply want to welcome each of you, and particularly to thank the Senator for all he does for the state and for us, particularly at St. Michael's, and for bringing the Ambassador with us. We know this is a busy week in Washington. I heard one wag this morning say that the Tea Party was now complaining that there was a government takeover of Congress. So we have to be sure that we get the Senator back for some important votes later in the week. Senator Sanders, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and President Neuhauser, thank you. And thank you all very much for being here this afternoon. I think sometimes as a nation we become a little bit arrogant in thinking that we know all of the answers. And I think that arrogance is on display when we take a look at the very, very serious problems that our country is facing today. In fact, a series of problems that are as great as at any time since the Great Depression of the 1930s. And I think it does not behoove us to ignore how other countries are dealing with similar types of issues. For example, in America today, we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth. Over 18% of our kids live in poverty. How does that compare to other countries, especially Scandinavian countries? And we'll talk about that today. Those of you who are here at St. Mike's and millions of other young people who are in college are leaving school very deeply in debt because the cost of college education in this country is extraordinarily high. Well, how much does it cost to go to school in Denmark? The ambassador is going to tell you that answer in a few minutes, but I'll give you a hint. Free. Doesn't cost anything. How does that happen? We are struggling right now, as everybody in this room knows, with the issue of health care. We have 46 million people uninsured, and we end up spending almost twice as much per person on health care as any other nation, and yet our outcomes, how long we live, infant mortality, is not particularly good compared to other countries like Denmark. And yet Denmark spends almost half as much per person on health care, and yet they guarantee health care to all of their people as a right of citizenship. In our country, people are working, people lucky enough to have jobs, are working the longest hours of any people in the industrialized world. That's not widely known. We surpassed the Japanese some years ago. Our people work, it's not uncommon, 60, 70 hours a week, not uncommon. Many jobs that are being offered have very little vacation time, sometimes zero. Sometimes you're there a few years, you get a week, you get 2 weeks. In Denmark and other Scandinavian countries, every person by law is guaranteed 6 weeks paid vacation. In this country, when you have a baby, we fought very hard, and we overcame a veto of first President Bush, so that if you're a mom and you have a baby, you can't be fired by your employer if you work in a fairly large company. That's what we managed to achieve, overriding a veto. In Denmark, and many other countries in Scandinavia and Europe, if you have a baby because they believe it is important, that family values are more than just a phrase, you get to stay home with your baby for 1 year. And you are paid to do that. Right? So you are looking at a different type of culture, which says that it is important that we use the wealth of a country not just to reward people on top with huge stock options or huge salaries, but to make sure that all of the people have a decent standard of living and minimal rights. So you're in a country where people don't worry about health care, it's covered. They don't worry about, as your parents do, the high cost of college education. It's covered. People are not stressed out because they're working incredible hours and don't have any time to relax, enjoy some leisure time, because they get time off. And it's an interesting country because they do this. Not actually, as the ambassador has been saying, it's not a socialist country. They are a very pro-business country. But what they have decided is part of their culture, and that's the point that I want to get across to you, is we are a very pro-business country, but we say the goal is to make as much money as you possibly can, and then fight like crazy to make sure you don't have to pay any taxes. Fight like crazy to have that the workers who are employed by you don't have any rights at all. That it's all about you. Make as much money. If you're in it for yourself. And if the kid down the street is homeless, don't worry about that kid. And if the person next door can't afford to send their kids to college, don't worry about that. And the guy on the other side of town can't afford health care, don't worry about that. Because it's all you. You're in it for yourself. That's what life is about. It's the survival of the fittest. And we all got to claw and scrape and beat the other guy away so that we can have some income and wealth for ourselves. That's a philosophy. But there's another way to do things. And I think Denmark is an interesting case history, and we're really very excited that the ambassador is here. They do it a little bit differently. From birth to death, they do it differently. And I think there is a lesson to be learned. Last night we had the ambassador in Montpellier before a very large crowd.